Today's guest is Loretta Breuning. The topic today is harnessing the power of our happy brain chemicals. Um, some have said that mental health is mental wealth. It's wealth. So I'm gonna bring her on. We can discuss some things ranging from the chemicals in our brain that contribute to our overall well-being, to the chemicals that some also contribute to different levels of stress. And hopefully you, like I, will have a better understanding of how to rewire our brains in a happier way. I'm not an expert in that topic, so therefore my guest is, and we'll take a deep dive with Loretta. And for those of you who have followed this podcast before, tonight will be the first time it will be exclusively on Spotify in the audio format, as it's also running on YouTube in the video format. And for Spotify, you're able to find it on other platforms that have been linked to Spotify. I'm no longer on my previous service provider. That being said, I have a happier brain because I've migrated to a system that will work better for me. Now let's bring Loretta on. Welcome to the show. Life is about more than living. I struggle with pronouncing your last name, so I'm gonna leave that to you to introduce yourself. In a second, and as I said off camera, we're gonna be talking about the happy brain chemicals and how the negative stuff impacts us as well. And I said, you are the expert in this area. I am not. Therefore, we're going to go down a journey, a road that I think people are aware is necessary, but often, like myself, don't want to take that journey because it's hard. And it is hard. And it's hard in my home and my life because I know the things I've struggled with, and I'm a better person when I'm in that happy space, as we all are. I'm a better husband overall. So hopefully I'll take away some personal points as my audience will take away a lot more. It, those of you who follow this, there's other episodes. This is the same format. Open roundtable conversation. Loretta's website is there for you to reach out to her. She has a book entitled The Habits of a Happy Brain. The link is also there. And that's all I gotta say. After this extremely happy but very stressful day. This show is family happening. Loretta, please introduce yourself better than I did.
Hi. Well, thanks for having me. I'm Loretta Breuning. I was a professor of international management for 25 years. And my whole life, I was always interested in psychology because just like you, we want to understand, like you said, the unhappy chemicals and why they are so powerful, why they turn on for reasons that's hard to make sense of. And after studying academic psychology for many years and living and visiting many different countries, I realized that all humans have the same problems. And academic psychology did not have the answer, in my opinion. So I got interested in animal research. And I was amazed to find that animals have the same happy chemicals that humans have. And stress chemicals, people have heard about cortisol.
Hmm.
Animals have cortisol. And in animals, it's easier to understand what turns on cortisol because they don't have a verbal brain to try to spin it or talk themselves out of it. And so I started studying that. So I wrote books about that, but my books do not represent like the mental health profession from the perspective of licensed people who tell you that you have a disorder and promise to cure you. So I'm not that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your honesty in that because quite a few people um, I have known and know are firm believers in holistic healing, is basically what you're talking about. And not,
It's not.
what I mean by holistic, I mean in the sense of, let me clarify, in the sense of there's other means of addressing issues beyond what the medical
Yes.
profession
Yeah. Yeah.
are putting out there for us. And some of those methods work for people like myself. I take um, can't think of the word for the doggone things now. I go beyond vitamins. I take certain supplements that I could be taking painkillers and prescription meds for arthritis in my hands, and those supplements have
Mhm.
actually allowed the swelling to go away in my hands, and then non-prescription, and the swelling in my ankles, along with the medications my doctor provides me with. However, these here have kept me from going deeper in the medication end because they built up and done what they do in my body that I'm lacking. So I understand that part. So on this part here, in the topic, I got bullet points: dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, cortisol. Those are the four things I picked up that I know you can. I will appreciate you expanding upon at some time. I do have a little bit of a cough. I do apologize for that. Uh, I'm not gonna have a conversation up here because I already had it at home. So we're gonna get through this. Let you do your thing. I'm gonna bring that in to say that my supplements are working well for me, whereas I could be medicated out on a bunch of stuff. And I almost did because I got to the point of taking too much uh, ibuprofen. When by the time I got to see my doctor, she was like, "The dosage you were taking could cause liver damage, so
Yeah,
stop."
yeah, yeah.
But I told her my hands were hurting so bad at that time.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
it was like, no, I was like, yep, done. A little bit of Tylenol, increase the supplements. And yeah, anyway, that's just my personal story. But that's not brain chemistry. This is a different element. But go back to you, Miss Loretta.
Great. Well, yeah, I totally agree with you that we need to look for alternatives because the medical route has side effects that don't get enough attention. I
Hmm.
just meant it's not holistic in the sense that it's not spiritual, it's not
Right.
about diet. So it's about understanding what makes our animal brain happy and what makes our animal brain unhappy. And
Hmm.
it's not what we would, it's not poetry, it's not like people want to think like higher values of
Hmm.
what we should be happy about, but it's not that because animals are quite nasty to each other.
Hmm.
Despite the warm and fuzzy view that people have about animals, um,
Hmm.
animals want to win, and
Hmm.
everyone has that inside them, is I want to
Hmm.
win.
Right.
And we learn to manage it, but it's always there. And
Hmm.
we always struggle with it. So I think it's like being honest with that we have more power to redirect it when we're honest about it.
Okay. Let's, I mean, this is real
So,
laid back. More laid back than the end because I've had some heavy hitters on the show lately. I mean, in a sense, really emotional driven type people who, so that's not a bad thing. But this, to me, this is a switch in conversation and process. Uh, Not hearing, well, I went through this, I came through this, I found this organization, we're doing good for people. This is about a one-on-one, what you can as an individual do, and the commonalities, which some don't want to admit, between humans and animals. It's easy to admit it when you see the dolphin and the whale and no matter how intelligent they are, but they're basic, more base, darker levels, as you mentioned, that we encounter. So,
yeah, I also, a lot of people, they don't mind saying that we're animals, but they want to say that animals are pure and loving and cooperative.
yeah,
And
right.
that's
We've seen animals in the wild. Yeah,
ignoring the facts.
yeah,
Exactly. So a pet is nothing like our brain because a pet just sits around and gets fed. But
right.
our brain evolved to look constantly for food, to
Hmm.
run constantly from predators, and to
Right.
compete for mates. And when you understand that, you see why people drive themselves crazy over
Hmm.
small things because that's what the animal brain is, having life or death feelings all the time.
So, an elevated version of fight or flight is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. And also in the animal world, food doesn't just come to them. You get the image that they just pick it off the trees, but in fact, they have to work very hard for it, and they often fight with their group mates over it. Monkeys steal food from
Yeah,
children, really,
yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that we should do this, but that impulse is there, and we have to work really hard to manage it. And we get frustrated when we see it in others, but our brain rewards us for, like, I'm going to get that banana. And that's why it's hard to manage, because our brain is designed to motivate that.
hmm So, in that thing you just mentioned about we're going to get that, it's not really coming back around to, I think, what I'm trying to get in that chemical side of it, not making excuses, but how, not just how we internalize and move on certain things, but how our physical intake affects the brain overall. Because some people tan easier than others. Some people are very, my complexion, I still can tan. It's a chemical side of the happy brain that you mentioned in your bio. The good, the bad. I think you said cortisol, the stress chemical that paves highways in your brain. So we need to rewire. As one example, let's go down to that particular one, because especially now in the political and religious climate we're in, stress is a big one.
So our brain is not wired when we're born. Each brain is wired by its own experience.
Okay.
So, you hear maybe a story about, like, a dog or a horse that's afraid of a certain thing because it
hmm
was hurt by that thing when it was
hmm
young. And then this dog or horse loves this food because, that was the food that it learned to like when it was young.
hmm
So when we're young, our neurons connect whenever a happy chemical turns on, because that's the brain's way of saying, this is what you need. This is important information.
hmm
So, like, a monkey is not born knowing how to find food, but every time it finds food, it's like, oh, wow, that relieved my hunger. That
hmm
feels good. And then it wires itself how to find that food.
hmm
So this is what each of us learns. Like, let's say you're a kid in school, you're a kid in high school, whatever gets you a pat on the back and a hug or a smile, you learn to repeat that.
hmm
Whatever gets you a bad reaction, you learn to fear that. And these pathways in our brain, they last for life. They're designed to last for life. So there's nothing foolish about running on childhood wiring, because, like, it's really what everyone does. And yet, yeah, nobody likes to admit this.
Yeah, but also in renting a childhood wiring, as you say, uh, as an adult, does that also change, in your opinion? And now we have the ability to re-examine, to revisit, to look at things differently. In your opinion, does that not give us an option to make decisions differently by rewiring our brain? And
Yes,
I
we
go back to,
do.
okay.
But what I always explain is it's exactly like learning a foreign language. We all know it's possible to learn a foreign language, but almost nobody does it
Yeah.
because it takes so much work. So
Especially in
it's the
our
same.
culture. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
we're that's another show.
Yeah, but even in other cultures, they learn in childhood, but they don't learn in adulthood either. So the bottom
Right.
line is that when you're a child, you learn whatever language you're exposed to,
hmm
because the child brain builds neural pathways and highways
hmm
easily. But once you get into your 20s, you don't build those highways easily. So it takes a lot of repetition.
hmm
And that's why it's hard to learn a foreign language. And to learn new emotional responses, how do you get yourself to repeat something new when it's not fun? So that's the challenge.
In other words, certain emotional responses are still rooted, though some of us might struggle with saying so, like I do. They're still rooted in childhood, teenage, young adulthood responses, but our brains are younger. according to what you're suggesting.
Yeah, that's when our brains have this highway building material that builds the big highways in your brain. And for life, we flow into the big highways because they're so efficient. So if we want to do something different, it's like if you were in the jungle and you're taking this tiny little trail and you feel lost and you keep feeling like something's wrong and you want to go back to that big highway. So that's how it is in our brain. And we could build a new trail in our brain, but first it's a lot of work and then it feels scary. So that's the challenge. And everyone who has ever tried to change themselves, if you understand that that's what you're doing, then it's a
Hmm.
little easier.
Okay. Well, I had to do something different on my end, which is I went full screen because this is also the first time where I've got it set up so that people make live comments. We can see them live.
Oh, good.
Because I hate to say you're part of my rewiring as I consider moving to another service. But it's okay. So I'm looking for people on Facebook or somewhere to say something. If they do, they do. We'll know. You'll see the same thing according to what this is telling me here. Uh, but anyway, back to that point. I keep getting off point. Uh, so I think that's one of what you're saying. I can relate to an aspect that I've had this language app on my phone forever and a day. I would get into about maybe less than one or two, and I'm like, oh,
Mm, mm, mm.
I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. But then thinking if I could just stay with it long enough to learn a few basic sentences and phrases, how much more beneficial it would be. But still, I get into that, and that's what you're going back to. At the age of 63, my brain is not the way it was back then. And though I firmly think the brain is the one thing you can continue to feed yourself and grow insights and understanding. But it's also aging in a different context that I can't explain because I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not attempting to explain it. It just how for me personally, I know what you're saying and others can relate. It's harder to learn a new language. It's harder to learn a new habit, a new routine than it was when I was 20 or 30 years old.
Yeah, so the way to do it, I've learned from animal trainers, and the way they do it is to break something into small steps and give a
Hmm.
reward for each step. And you
Okay.
do that if you care enough about it. So for language, maybe if it's just not an important goal, as opposed to, we do it when it's something that's really important.
Right.
So if you want to choose an example of something that's important, we could go through an example. For some people, learning a new language is important because they
Yeah.
say, I want to move to this other place or marry this other person.
Yeah. Or like even to the aspect of what we're talking about now, the happy brain, right? How to be a more content, ongoing individual with all, again, I say the stresses of
Okay.
life.
Yeah.
And not so much, I don't want people to think this is all about the stresses. Could also creating a happy thought pattern, better thought patterns, be because you're celebrating life? It's not always the negative of life. Could that also be related
Yes,
to a level of
absolutely.
celebration? Okay.
Absolutely. However, the average person will listen to this and they'll say, well, I don't have anything to celebrate. If I did, I wouldn't be,
Yeah.
So it's not easy to just tell a person, let go of your pain and feel
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It
that's
sucks to
why.
hear that. I hate hearing that, but anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I'll use like a very practical example. So so the brain is always learning from rewards. Just
Hmm.
like an animal, it learns whatever if you give the animal a treat, when
Hmm.
it does this, then it does this again. But
Okay.
if the animal attacks you to get you to give it a treat, and you give it
Hmm.
a treat then it's going to just attack you again. So
Hmm.
we have to be very careful when you give the treat. So the average person, they are giving themselves a treat when they do something bad. And when I say
Mm.
that, I mean, like you say, I had a hard day. I'm going to give myself shopping, bottle of wine, a,
Hmm.
a scoop of ice cream. So
Hmm.
you're rewarding yourself for having a bad day. So instead, you could say, I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to give myself this reward if I have a good day. And
Right.
every time you do that, you help to build a new neural pathway. It's like, I'm not
Okay.
going to give myself that reward until I think some positive thoughts about my life.
Okay. It's, so I'm pausing because I know like some of it's hitting home.
So,
I
and let
mean,
me give you another example. One of my hobbies, I love to read biographies and I listen
hmm
to biographies and watch them.
yeah.
So, any famous person you've ever heard about, if you hear about their childhood, it was awful. So,
Hmm.
everyone in human history that you could think about had a childhood that would be considered horrible, awful from today's
Hmm.
perspective. So, we have really very unrealistic expectations today. We think, you have to make a child happy every minute and you
Hmm.
could
Yeah.
only do good things if you had a good childhood. No,
Yeah.
it's not true at all. So, people who have had really bad experiences in their past, they built the habit of continuing taking the next step. Something bad happens, I'm going to work on the solution. And that's what triggers happy chemicals. Because in the animal world, like if you ever watch nature videos, you
Yeah.
see that a lion sometimes goes a whole week without getting food because they miss most of the time. So the lion has to try again and again and again in order to eat. So that's hard, but the lion's happy chemicals help it try again and again. So this is
Mhm.
the habit that really is the true source of happiness. And if we don't have that habit, then we look for cheap sources of happiness, which have bad side effects.
Yeah. I, so we could name a lot of those. Uh, but I'm not. So
In my book, I say you could name 10 of them in 10 seconds.
yeah, actually you could. Actually you could. Or less than 10 seconds. If you just
Yeah.
rambling on. Yeah, you're like, boom.
Yeah, everybody's thinking right now, yeah, there's this and there's this. And especially you see them in other people, you know.
Yeah. See them in other people more easily than we do ourselves. Uh, and I'm kind of on pause now because I thought this was going to be a lot heavier, a lot deeper. If you take in what I thought was going to be a heavy topic, it made it really simple. Simple is good, especially after the type of day, roller coaster day I've had. Simple is good. Simple is good for a lot of people, considering where things are going in their life, at least the ones I've engaged with. Uh, some things don't, I don't believe I'm about to say this.
Okay.
We don't have to overcomplicate everything.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not doing
Yeah. I mean, if you
it.
want to bring up some unhappy topic, I'm happy to talk
No,
about
but I'm
it.
just saying that we don't, I said it the way I did because the way part of my wiring is, I can easily complicate something that's simple. And I was prepared with the more in-depth outline based off your information you shared with me to go there. And it don't, wa- I don't want to sound like my wife. It don't always have to be this hard. It,
Yeah.
it can
Yeah.
explaining something,
Yeah.
sharing something, giving
Yeah.
information, exchanging information doesn't have to
Yeah.
be hard. It can be like we laugh when we talk. It's a serious topic because I don't think you can really find anyone alive and functioning normal and good mental health that doesn't want some type of happiness experience or happiness in their life. It's different than someone who is not plugged in that way. But I don't believe there's anyone who doesn't want to experience it on a more regular basis. Um, this is coming from a guy who sometimes I have a whole podcast entitled named "Life's Up More Than Living." I have a whole slogan that no matter what happens, I win. And yet I'm transparent up here, like I do with other guests and similar topics. I struggle with that happy part,
mm,
maintaining
mm,
it. I struggle
mm.
with picking it up. I fully understand what you're saying because as a kid growing up, we had four channels, and on one of those channels, for those who remember, was Wild Kingdom. Uh,
Yes, yes, exactly.
so we
Yeah.
grew up watching the interactions of the animals more
Mm.
so, and not understanding then. I didn't understand then as I do now what you're saying, but I do recall how they often talked about the interactions of the animals on the shows. And then I do understand now that a lot of that was edited and stripped it out so you get a audience to watch the show. But it was still animalistic behaviors. And you see the happy prairie and the happy lion when he gets to the gazelle, and everybody ate the meal and they lying around like it's Thanksgiving dinner. But you didn't see the behind the scenes what happened on that dinner like people don't see on Thanksgiving Day. The arguments, the family that don't want to be there, the person in the family who couldn't really cook but said they were the best cook in the family, and all this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, lions actually, they eat in a certain order. This one eats first, then that one eats, then that one eats. And in every, so like goats do the same, chickens do
Yeah.
the same, monkeys
Mhm.
do. So when like if you have bunch of women around
Yeah.
dinner competing over who makes a better this or this or this,
Yeah.
or who did more than their share of the work,
Yeah.
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So we just have a more verbal way of competing, which is nice. It's better than stealing bananas from each
Yeah.
other.
Or even in certain cultures, the hierarchy that is maybe not as prominent now, since a lot of families are not tight as they once were, or more disconnected. That's what I've said. What I consider this antisocial social media type thing. But what I'm getting at is that in certain cultures there was that hierarchy that I never really connected to the animal kingdom. You seniors get it first, and this one get fed next, then this one gets fed next, and that one gets fed next. No one goes without, but you follow the pecking order in that culture. And as you just said, that's the same way in the Lions King um, tr- kingdom, so to speak. Uh, this one does this does that, and down the line. So in that sense, we, whether by creation, by design, by evolution, that is a commonality across all human creation, as I choose to believe. Now hearing it as you have presented it, uh, but we as human beings have been able to change a lot of that. Versus in the animal kingdom, it's gonna still be the same. Because in this context, we are the thinking individuals. When we choose to think, we choose to establish new habits, new patterns, and new things. Key word is choice. Versus in the animal kingdom, is this, and that. Uh, Based on your example of the lions. Uh, and there are deviations on that. Again, I watched Wild Kingdom back in the day, which young people don't know what Wild Kingdom is. If they don't know what it is, Google it. Look up the show Wild Kingdom on
Yeah.
YouTube. Uh, you can see more what Loretta's talking about. Well, in a nature show, really, in this day and time, especially with the technology to get in close and people studying animals and stuff at a distance. Uh, that's where I'm like, I didn't include that aspect of it in the title. I didn't really know how we were going to go deeply in it because I didn't want the people to log in and say, "Oh Lord, they said we just like the animals out here in the wild." But really, there are similarities across this whole, as I call it, creative spectrum.
Yeah, and like
And to,
let's look at it from the gazelle's point of view. So the gazelle is constantly worried about being eaten by a
mhm,
lion. And we
mhm,
have inherited this brain that's constantly worried about something going wrong.
mhm,
And if the gazelle said, "I'm not going out until it's 100% safe," then the gazelle would starve to death.
right,
So it's if the gazelle had a refrigerator and a pizza delivery at
right,
home, then it would never go out, and then it would constantly live in fear of lions.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
it's for all of human history, there were much worse threats than we live with today.
Mm-hmm.
But people still had to go out into the world and tame that fear in order to get fed and to
Just get
feed their
fed.
kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And just basically to function in spite of the fear.
Yes,
Uh,
exactly. Today,
so
young kids, like they have maybe a fear of taking a test and they're not getting to challenge that fear and to go past it, but they're just saying, oh, well, I have this problem. I can't take tests. Like that doesn't benefit anybody.
taking tests is part of the growth and feeding the brain.
It is, but
Man,
that's not the
this is
view
not.
that
No,
is
it's not
being
the view.
taught today.
No, it's not. This and therein comes where I think it's responsibility of other individuals to try to share that dynamic when possible, do it in a format that's receivable, because at some point that same individual is going to be out here and supposedly in some context functioning on their own. And that's going to, which caused me to get ready to use a word I haven't brought up yet, which can test out their survival skills, like in the animal kingdom.
Yes.
So you have no skills to know how to survive, to find a way to make something sometimes out of nothing. Uh,
Yeah. I'll
it's
give you a good example of this. So, people who watch monkeys, they found
mhm,
monkeys cracking open this certain kind of nut. And
mhm,
nuts are the most important thing in a monkey's diet because they have almost no protein otherwise.
mhm.
And protein is what they need to have the muscle strength to then win the contest
Right,
for
right.
the ladies, let's say.
Hmm.
So, how do you crack open a nut? It's hard. The little monkeys can't do it. They try and try and try and they fail. And it's sort of like you watch this on YouTube and it's like it
Yeah,
almost makes you cry, but nobody gives a monkey a nut like parents don't crack their nuts
right,
open for them ever. So
right.
one adaptation that our brain has, it's called mirror neurons. We mirror what those around us are doing. So when someone near you gets a reward, you're like, wow, they got a nut. What did they do? And the monkey is literally mirroring the motions that worked. So you're always watching someone, and then if
Hmm.
they score, you do what they do.
Right.
And if they get eaten by a lion, then you avoid what they did because you don't
Yeah,
want
to
to get
get
eaten by a lion.
right.
So this is mirror neurons. We're always mirroring what others do and trying to learn from their rewards and avoid their pain. And
Hmm.
it doesn't work with words, so we're not so aware of it. But this is what another animal impulse that's always going on.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. It doesn't always work with words. Sometimes we start putting words into things. It either lead to arguments and disagreements and separations versus imitation of action, uh, which goes back to what you mentioned earlier. The younger brain, small child brain is more, I think, uh, we it adapts more to seeing and copying, like you said, that monkey with the nut. It's more palatable to say, "Oh, if Daddy did it, let me try it," and
Mm.
then you get that
Yeah.
manual dexterity, that growth. Or Mommy did it, let me try it.
Yep.
Or my big brother did it, or Silkworm did it, let me try
Yep. The problem is that if you see like the cool kid in school and the cool kid gets rewards from other kids. And so the kid brain is constantly looking around what gets rewards and I want to imitate that.
it. Yeah,
Non-verbally, that's what they're going to do. So that's the challenge is, to expose our kids to good behaviors because they just sponge up whatever they're exposed to.
yeah. I'm not gonna name my friend up here, but we ended up having an encounter. He was a friend with a gentleman I had an encounter with. I've been trying to have an encounter with, and when he shared the story, even now I chuckle. 'Cause I'm like, "You went to school with him?" He went to school with that guy. He's basically, and if he catches this show at any point, he was like, yeah, we were the three cool guys, but so and so spoke three languages,
Mm.
so we allowed him in our group because that impressed the girls. 'Cause he can speak three languages in high school, and we could do everything else. So it became the four of us because we allowed him into our group because he could do something we couldn't do. And,
Mm.
and so I'm like, so he became a cool kid because he, with you guys, he was like, well, yeah, but we all came out better because he had something he was bringing that we could not do at a high school level. And when I met this individual, I would never have no, thought that he spoke multiple languages like that. But he
Because
was,
he was exposed to it as a kid, right?
no, this is the high school. This is one of the things how my friend said that's how his brain was wired. He could pick up a language easily.
Yeah, but I'll bet he was exposed to it, like something in somewhere around him that
Well,
coming in
he
years.
grew up in a typical African American Jersey home. It wasn't about multilingual home. It was something that's why I go back to again, and this is gonna be a challenge here where I still believe that certain people brains they can get limited exposure to certain things and learn them more easily. Now I being a father of kids who studied music all through college, I saw the impact of music on how you learn differently versus the impact of people who engage in sports, how they learn differently. And that's probably one of my closest times I went to look at how the brain works because I had music teachers and people I had conversations with in the early period, in the early years, talk about kids getting exposed to music that changes their learning style. And I couldn't read a note, but it rewired their brain on a different level of comprehension. This individual here, he loves books. That could have been how he picked up the ability to learn more languages because he was also an avid reader. And even when I gave him a copy of my book, I wanted to sign my book. He would not let me sign my book because he said he takes books from authors and he passes them on to someone else and gives them away. There are certain books he keeps in his library, and certain books he gives away. So that could have been the point you getting at behind the scenes. He could have been reading all sorts of books, but I don't know. I didn't go that deep. Just know that he was able to get in with the cool guys because he could do something they couldn't do. His brain was wired different, like you said.
Yeah, good, good. And a surprising lot before age 8, whatever we're exposed to before age 8 builds the biggest wiring. It's surprising, but that's how our brain works. And
See, I
so,
always thought, well, that fits in what I believe, because and I believe back in the day when I was reading that kind of stuff, helping my kids growing up, different things, is that I know the earlier you get it before the age of 10, the better you were able to navigate and move on in life, and you kept on building off of that.
mm-mm.
So, yeah, I'm talking about my adult son somewhat in this thing because we did the same thing with my grandkids. Before they could read, they had a book in their hand. They could barely hold a book. My oldest son, who's 39, and I wonder if his mom still has that book. That book stayed around for a long time. I remember the name of it. It was named I Am a Snort. 39 years later, maybe 39 this year, I still remember the book. It was, I guess, a book, however they coded books, plastic back then, whatever. But all he could do was eat and chew and lick on it until he got to the point of, and all we did was read over and over to him until he got to the point where he could start calling the words out himself. But it was the
Mm,
very first book he ever got.
mm.
And so with grandkids, they've had books, they've had library, small libraries. I think they still do. Actually, I get books up here from the conference I went away. They've had books since before they could speak. I say that in line with what you're saying, and people may dismiss it, Everybody has a choice and their preference. They do more than just give a tablet or a device to a person, kid. Give them something across the board so you won't just be thinking, oh, I got my cell phone, I got my tablet, and the power goes out, and some of these devices read for you. Now you got to, you like, huh? Because your eyes not trained to read across the page. Again, back to what you were saying, that early age, get this exposure. And I don't even know how this thing went that way, but you doing, yeah, do you mention the word before the age of 8?
Yeah, yeah, it's surprising.
So, more or less, I think it's surprising to some people. I think it's enlightening to others because they may, after this show, if they catch this show, individuals in that, who knows? I know my demographics. My demographics are always changing, and I don't know what it's going to look like now it's on Spotify as the lead. Uh, but what I do know is that everyone has been on this show after it's been out there for a couple of days. Somebody's been impacted somewhere. Uh,
Good.
and what you're saying now, this show itself, I know, gonna bring in a different audience, especially in this time of political turmoil, religious turmoil, and people are looking for avenues to feel better. I could easily call this show something like uh, t- various ways to feel better.
Yeah.
I didn't want to sound dorky. I wanted to get to the core of it, that we have a physical brain that we can actually address and train. Or you use the word rewire.
Yeah. So it's not that easy, though. There's no like fast, easy solution.
No,
So I could go,
nothing's easy fast. So
yeah.
I get
So
that
I
part.
could go through, if you want, I could go through each of the chemicals to just explain what sparks them and why there's no like free lunch.
Well, let's wrap it up that way. You hit on each one briefly. And I'm gonna say this, for those of you who want to take a deeper dive, there's a link there, not only to her website, there's also the link there to her Amazon page for her book. So this would not have to be your end all be all. Uh, so go
Good.
into text, click the links. They work on almost they should work on almost every website. If it's an audio version, you just click the link and open up. Take you directly to Loretta's book, directly to her website. Uh, I call it what I call it my freebie I give off to people that come on the show. Since I'm not paying you to come on the show, that you get to share your talents and gifts with others. But anyway, let's hit these chemicals real quick with your closing thoughts, and then I'm gonna say have a good night.
Good. So, dopamine, people have heard a lot about that in the news recently, but it's all negative. So, dopamine is the brain's signal that you're about to get a reward.
Hmm.
So, when you're looking forward to something, or when you're training or moving toward a goal, dopamine makes you excited about that. But if you're not moving toward a goal, then you think about, well, maybe I'll order a pizza. Maybe I'll open a bottle of wine. Maybe I'll have an ice cream. Then that gives you a little dopamine, but then soon the dopamine's over and then you have to have another ice cream.
Hmm.
So that's why just picking a goal, small steps toward a goal are all it takes. But once you reach the goal, the dopamine stops. So you have to then have another goal. And that's the natural way to spark dopamine and not to blame it on your phone or whatever is on your phone.
Hmm. Okay. I'm gonna you take them. Next one is serotonin, which I've heard some good and bad about.
Yeah. So the pharmaceutical industry has controlled the general view of serotonin, which suggests that it just makes you happy for no reason.
Hmm.
And lucky people are happy for no reason because they have serotonin. And if you're not lucky, then you got to take a pill. So this is one view. And yet, in animals, we know that when animals are always trying to assert themselves over, like if there's a banana between you and
Hmm.
me, if I see that you're bigger than me,
Mhm.
I'm not going to try to get the banana because I
Right.
don't want to get hurt. You Your brain gets a little bit of serotonin when you see
Mhm.
that you're bigger than me. So now I got to find another banana. Oh, there's a banana and I'm the bigger one now. So now my
Mhm.
brain gives a little serotonin whenever I think I'm in the one up position. So that's why in the modern world, we're not going to have a fist fight over bananas. So maybe it's like my chicken soup is better than your chicken soup or
Right.
whatever it is. But like in like my mother's world, it was like my friend's children visit her more than my children visit
Mhm.
me. You know what I mean? So then you feel like
Yeah.
you're in the so then you
Yeah.
feel like you're in the one down position. Then you get stress chemicals. But if you say, I have a good life, then you get serotonin. So it's
Okay.
all in your own thoughts, but most people don't realize that power that they have over their own thoughts.
Okay. Well, now oxytocin.
Yeah,
That one.
oxytocin, and this is confusing because it sounds like oxycodone, I know, but
Well, yeah, that's
complete
why I try to be careful how I say it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, completely different. So, so oxy is just refers to the shape of the molecule. So that's
Right.
why.
Oxygen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So oxytocin is the chemical that motivates animals to stick with the herd. And
Mhm.
humans, we know that people have this desire for safety in numbers or being with a
Mhm.
group. And
Community. That's what we call it. Yeah.
hmm,
Community. Community.
community, yes.
Yeah.
So we've been given this positive spin on it, but as you know, most people they're in the community to benefit themselves. And
Mhm.
when you discover that, then you're sort of like upset. And then it's sort of like a competition. Well, I gave more to this community and I didn't get anything back, and you didn't give
Yeah.
anything, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So the bottom line is that in the animal world, they rush to the group when they're threatened by a predator. When there's no
Mm.
predator, they'd
Mhm.
rather separate because if they stick with the group, they eat food that was peed on by the other animals and that
Mhm.
makes them sick. So
Mhm.
the natural thing is not to stick with the herd all the time, but to make decisions. In this moment, it's good to go your own way. And in this moment, you need protection from others. And so that's oxytocin is I can let down my guard because I have protection from others. And that's the
Okay.
feeling that we're looking for.
Yeah, I'm watching and listening as you get. I don't want to move on until I pull this one thing up. Let me find it, and I haven't even started listening to it yet. I was listening to a podcast, and this is totally not. Uh, yeah, when you mentioned that part, it made me think about the book I'm going to start, which is the title is "The Courage to Be Disliked."
Oh, yeah. I think I've heard of that. Yeah.
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 Uh, it's a 6 hour and a half long listen. It,
Hmm.
it was mentioned in the podcast I heard earlier today, and the way he laid it out, um, I'm like, I guess I'm not crazy after all. I'm like, it's okay for me to not be the
With
person
the
that's
herd.
always liked,
Exactly.
because I can be very crass, I can be very brass at times, and my defense has always been, those who are in my corner, in my corner. You don't like the way I came at you, that's on you. And some people are like, you could be more loving, more understanding, more likable. Yeah, there are times for that, but I'm okay with not being liked by everybody. And that is part of my upbringing, going back to use the child chemical. Yeah, I was conditioned that the world was against me. So, and a lot of negative stuff was fed to me as a child into my teenage years, which still I deal with now, even now in therapy. However, the retraining and rewiring where I can say now it's okay, I don't have to be liked, but also it's good to be part of the community because I'm always talking about community, but it goes back to what you said though about able to separate from the community and be okay with that.
Yeah.
And when someone tells me, yeah, I'm wrong for separating, like, that's how you feel. I'm okay with being apart from it.
And when they tell you that, are they really trying to get something from you?
No, they're not. There's types of behavior certain types of behavior I believe people have been conditioned to see as being normal, and most of us should have them, and we should go along this
Mm.
way. And if you
But
don't,
maybe they're getting something out of it, like that they want you in their group because then they could be the big
well,
cheese of the
it's,
group.
well, I ain't gonna name this particular person because they catch the show, they know what I'm talking about. But yeah, my thing is I love group, I love community, but I also know that I can exist without it because I was
Mhm.
conditioned as a kid to exist without it
Mm,
for the wrong reasons.
mm,
I learned the benefits of it as a young adult. I've come
mm.
to appreciate as I got closer into my 40s and 50s, I've learned I can have both sides of the thing. Like you just
Yes.
mentioned, I can be, oh, great. I love this. Like I had a hard conversation with my pastor, and I can finally say that because I had some things on my mind that I wanted to say. And I was with a group of men online and what they call a prayer call. And after that call was over, I texted him a long text expounding upon how I felt about certain things, how I felt about my interactions and things I recently did, not knowing it was going to trigger a phone call. But it was a phone call I needed to, and a conversation I needed to have because I was able to address with him in the phone call the part and clarify some misunderstandings of what some of his movements were. That I'm not, that I firmly like your methodology. I enjoy your teaching style. I love what you're doing in your processes and procedures, and it works for me. It's not, so I'm not trying to be what they call a runner and jump from one church to another. My issue came down to me sharing how I felt impacted by his actions and his words. And at the end of it, we both he suggested, let's leave that where it's at. We start anew. And I'm like, I'm good with that because I need the community, but also need to know that I'm the individual. Well, I didn't realize I'll bring that to this show tonight, but I found the courage by listening in, being part of another community. And the courage is another show I like coming up, I think, dealing with courage. Uh, and that, but all said and done, I fully understand what you're saying because I lived a lot of it this week. Uh, and I brought it back to that because, as you mentioned, in the animal kingdom, there's a reason for them being there.
Yeah.
In the human
And you know
kingdom,
what? If
man,
you, when you're young, if you get wired when you're young to think the world is against me, and then you talk about rewiring, but you can't just rewire and say the world is for me because it's just not realistic and your brain is not going to
no,
believe it. So
no,
again, the idea is small steps. Like sometimes, like I don't want to go to a party, but I make myself go for a half hour. It's
right.
like a small step. I
And
know
then,
people that go to parties for like 6 hours. Like, I don't want
yeah, I
to
can't do
do
that.
that.
Yeah, that's why I go back to it. It's taking me, it's an ongoing process to rewire, to see things differently, and to be okay with saying I can be a very brass, I can be a very hard person, but I also can be a very loving and kind person. I can be part of the community, and I can be not part of the community. And like you said, with the party example, yeah, great. I don't mind going to an event. I don't mind being part of an event, but at a certain point, I want to migrate over here. And some people stay, I think you're going to expound upon this, going a little bit off track, as I said when I wrap this up. Some people stay just because they are afraid of being rejected.
Yeah.
I'm listening, that's up to you. I just do it out there. Some people, in my opinion, do their brains or whatever. That's why I want you to take it over. They they are conditioned to
Mm.
be uncomfortable and pretend it's happiness. That's
Yeah, yeah. I try not to go into too much of what's wrong with other people because we can infinitely find that. But
well, I'm not so much going into what's wrong with other people. I'm going into the aspect of the thinking and the conditioning
Yeah.
that they have been conditioned to the point where they rather be miserable than embrace the happiness of leaving the crowd
Yeah.
or the
Well,
event.
some people are afraid to be alone.
That
And that
that's what that's for. Yeah,
wiring is just as painful as all, I'm afraid to be with people. I'm afraid to not be with people.
yeah,
Whatever was your childhood pain,
yeah.
we
But does
all
that
keep
all?
repeating it.
But does that goes back to, I think, the acceptance of the herd mentality, of the group mentality. You are in a place where in the herd, like in the animal kingdom, they gather for safety and for other reasons, as you
Mm,
highlighted.
mm,
You are in a place of safety
mm.
in
Yeah.
that moment,
Yeah.
and this is my verbiage, that you're disguising as happy.
Yes,
You're not
and you
real.
know what? So the talking part of our brain is separate from the part of the animal part of the brain that controls the emotions.
Hmm.
So the talking part of the brain always finds a way to justify whatever it is you're doing. So whether you're this or this or this, your talking brain's going to come up with some fancy philosophy to make it sound good.
Yeah, which goes back to all those different ways the chemicals in our brain interact and we work. Uh, Down to the last one, cortisol.
So, cortisol is the threat chemical that causes us to feel fear or sadness. People often, like you mentioned, call it fight or flight.
Uh-huh.
And the bottom line is that whatever hurt you when you were young built your cortisol pathways because your brain is saying, oh, so this is what I should look out for. So
Hmm.
imagine an animal that gets attacked when it goes to this certain place, then
Hmm.
neurons connect so it doesn't go to that certain place. So that's what we're all wired to fear, whatever hurt us long ago. And once the cortisol turns on, it feels like it's happening right now. Nobody's aware that it's just a chemical turned on by an old neural pathway. And that's why it's such a challenge to say, okay, I'm feeling bad, but it doesn't necessarily mean that something bad is happening. And our body will spit out this bad chemical in about an hour. But during that hour, you are convinced that something bad is really happening.
Wow. Mm, 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 mm. Okay. Oh, I'm going
It's
back. No, no, no,
not a
because
bad
I'm just no. It's not. It's not a bad thing. I'm having some. I can relate to a lot of what you just said in that loud part. Uh, I use the word harnessing in the title. Take us home. My dear podcast listeners, supporters of Life is What More Than Living, there's a QR code on your screen. Please scan it to connect with my link tree. Buy my book, Split Souls of Transition. It will take you on a journey that I firmly believe a lot of what she mentioned in this episode, Loretta mentioned, will help you to navigate the pages of my book. Continue to finding guests to come on the show that I can send back and say, look, if you buy
I'm
my
going to
book,
do it right now. I'm okay.
uh, it will help you because in the paperback form of the book, there are 3 pages of mental health resources. But all said and done, I use that as my current sponsor for my show. And we'll wrap it up like this. I'm done talking. Thanks for checking us out, finding me on the new platform, Spotify. Spotify, the show's been there before. Now it's exclusively on Spotify, uh, and where you what Spotify does, and YouTube. Uh, so the word I mentioned before I got off on the advertisement and the book and things. Please give us some closing points, however you want to phrase it, and then I'm gonna take you off camera about the importance of learning how to harness the power of the good chemicals in our brain.
Sure. So, once we accept the fact that we do have these urges and motivations that are not all nice, that, that like the animal is just trying to assert itself and feel its own power, And it's hard to find nice ways to do that, but we can. And it's good to know that you only need to take a small step and you get a small bit of this happy chemical. Don't think other people are getting, big fountains of happy chemicals all the time, because they're not. And as soon as you get a little bit of happy chemical, then it's going to turn off. So then you have to do something else to get a little more. And that can become a habit, and you can reward yourself. Like, for example, a simple way to think about it is, I'm not going to have my coffee in the morning until I have one positive thought. And I'm
Hmm.
not going to have my dessert at night until I am finding a fear that I had during the day and giving myself permission to say, well, that fear is natural because it matches my childhood neural highway. And just give yourself permission to let the chemical be digested and spit out. And then if you do that every day, you build a new neural pathway that expects to feel good because you've rewarded yourself for doing these healthy steps.
Thank you so much, Loretta Breuning, and for your coming on my show tonight. Thank you for being very patient, because we had several scheduling issues over the last few months. Uh, I would easily say you weren't the only one, because I've had a bunch of folks that we have scheduling issues. But as I firmly believe, the right ones that need to be on this platform are here. Everybody's not by design supposed to be on a certain show. I appreciate your insights. I'm taking you off camera now. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
You just be off camera. So we come to the end of another episode of Life is About More Than Living, a podcast. I challenge you, I have to challenge myself to not only hear the information, but to process it in a way that it will benefit you. My upcoming guest on my next show um, is 11 a.m. Central Time. His area is Westerbury. The show is entitled Adversity to Advantage, when done is better than perfect. Adversity to advantage, when done is better than perfect. That will be my next show with Areas Westbury. So, and then we go live this upcoming Friday, uh, 10 a.m., 10 a.m., or 11 a.m. Eastern Time. That's it, y'all. Have a good evening.